what's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining us for another episode of our podcast. I'm Les.
And I'm Mo.
And this is the Les and Mo Show. What's going on, everyone? This is episode 7. I literally cannot believe that this is episode 7. Can you believe that?
No, it's flying.
This
flying
is,
by.
this is going by so quick, but I hope you guys have been having a good week. And as always, we are always excited to hear from you guys about anything you want to comment about each episode, but we really want to hear some ideas for cases that you want us to cover. We want to bring you content that you want to hear. So please message us or just comment and tell us what you want to hear from us, and we'll do our best to bring you a good episode about that.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about the last 2 weeks, actually. I don't know if all of you knew. We were actually in Hawaii for the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
So the past 2 episodes we were uploading from Hawaii, and actually we had an error on one of the episodes, and I do apologize.
It was like a 30-second delay.
Yeah,
and
so that was funny because we took our honeymoon and we went out there, and it was crazy to just even upload episodes for a podcast when you're on your honeymoon. So.
Yeah, we were trying not to think about it too much, but the show goes on, and that's totally fine. While we were there, we even found out about the case of the Honolulu Strangler. I hope you guys have listened to that episode because it was baffling, to say the least. So,
but Hawaii's beautiful, man.
Yeah, if you get a chance to go. Don't walk, run. It's unbelievably amazing. So yeah, but let's jump into today's case.
Yeah, so today we are talking about a heartbreaking case that is still unresolved. This case is, I've never seen anything like this, and it honestly bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
We're discussing the murder of college student Pravin Varughese.
It'll definitely get you in your feels here.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a connection here to the story. So Pravin was an Indian American man who was born in 1994 in Evanston, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And, his family was really close. He was born into a really close family. They were tight-knit. And his mother, Lovely, she absolutely loved Pravin. His father's name was Matthew, and then he had 2 sisters named Preeti and Priya. And, from all accounts, he was a great kid growing up, and would turn out to be a great young man. And everyone that knew him would speak highly of him. He was fun, he was happy, and he just loved life.
He was a great kid, to say the least. A young man, a man. But, it's heartbreaking what happened to this kid. But you said that there was a connection. So how is that?
Yeah, so I actually knew of Pravin. We weren't necessarily friends, but we went to school together. He was a year older than me, and we actually went to junior high and high school together. So I knew of him. When you see someone every day when you're in school, you see your friends every day, you see people in school every day. So I recognized him right away. I would never forget that face, basically,
Yeah. And since this is, a case that has a lot to do with Chicago, it didn't happen in Chicago, but, he was from here.
He was from Chicago.
It's a big deal for us because it hits close to home because we're also located in Chicago. So this is something we definitely wanted to cover and bring even more attention to, just because it's
a crazy case.
Yes,
guys.
It's a crazy case. It's heartbreaking, but it deserves to be told.
Yeah. So moving on with Pravin, he was highly motivated to get a good education, and he even wanted to be a police officer after college.
Yeah, and he wanted to be an FBI agent after that. What goals, to aspire to?
And he was eventually, after high school, accepted into SIUC, which stands for Southern Illinois University of Carbondale, and he studied criminal justice.
Yeah, and Carbondale is 6-7 hours from here. Yeah, that's where my dad's side of the family is from, and we still have family living in the area to this day. So there was another connection because of that. So Yeah, it's a southern region of Illinois. It's kind of close to the borderline
St.
of
Louis.
Kentucky. Yeah, and it's about 2 hours south of St. Louis.
Yeah. Oh, it's past St. Louis, right?
Yeah, it's southern.
Yeah. So after high school, he would enroll into the school and he would get there. Praveen would eventually move into an apartment off campus with his cousin Ashley, and another friend. So they would attend school there. And at 19 years old, he seemed to be doing pretty well for himself, right? He made a lot of new friends. He was doing good in school. He was going to parties. And, he was basically an adult, but he was exploring this new life after
Yeah.
school.
After living with your parents your whole life, it's all brand new, at
Hmm.
that point, because just imagine the first time you moved out and you weren't under
So
your
true.
parents' roof anymore and you could make your own decisions. You had to make
Yeah.
your own decisions. Plus, he was getting his education on top of it. So there's a whole load of responsibility to that. And you're really finding your way as you transition into adulthood. So, I'm very happy that he was doing so good for himself and he was, doing very, very well with these transition and new stages of life.
So on
So.
February 12, 2014, everything would change for Pravin and his family.
Yeah, so Pravin called his family back home in Chicago around 9 p.m. on February 12th. And that was the usual time that he would call his family to talk to them. And it was every night that he did this. So he spoke with them for a little while that night, and then he decided to go to a party. Afterwards, he would arrive at the party and meet up with friends there, and he was there for a little while before he decided to head out. It's unclear where he was going and whether he had decided that he was going to go home or if he was going to go somewhere else, but wherever he was going, he decided to get a ride with fellow SIUC student Gage Bethune. Friends of Praveen would report that Gage was kind of an acquaintance, but not really. He was somebody new in Praveen's life. He had seen that Gage was leaving from a different party on the same street, so he decided to kind of hitch a ride with him. It's kind of undetermined, though, why Praveen would have caught a ride with Gage when they didn't really even know each other. So
Hmm.
during their ride, Gage, he claims that Praveen was talking on the phone with somebody or multiple people about cocaine and how to get some. And he also claimed that Praveen was belligerent, and that really began to scare him and make him uneasy. Gage, he said that Praveen eventually attacked him and tried to rob him. So he pulled his truck over on what's known as Route 13 that goes throughout Carbondale. And it's once you pass through the town of Carbondale and you start heading to the next town over, it's kind of a wooded area. And there's basically Route 13, and then to the right is the woods, and then past the woods, you come to a Buffalo Wild Wings. So, in between Route 13 and Buffalo Wild Wings is where he kind of pulled over. So, the two kind of got into it. They scuffled back and forth, and eventually they tumbled down the slope that was leading into the woods from the road. And Gage would be the last person to see Praveen alive.
At around 12 a.m., an Illinois state trooper saw Gage's truck pulled over with the hazard lights on, and he was on the side of Route 13. So the state trooper pulled over behind Gage's truck, and on the dashboard cam, he would see on the camera you can see Gage coming out of the woods, walking towards the officer and approaching him. Gage would go on to tell the state trooper that he was attacked and robbed by an African American male who was hitchhiking, and that he supposedly ran into the woods after the attack. So, after learning about the altercation between Gage and this other man, the state trooper did a quick perimeter check of the woods tree line by shining his flashlight in that direction for a short amount of time, and he never proceeded to go further deep into the woods. He didn't want to go in, which I think is crazy because
Yeah.
when you see the dash cam footage,
Yeah.
like, bro, he didn't do anything. He literally stood in the same spot the whole time.
Yeah, right in front of
Shined
his
his
car.
flashlight, like, real quick, like, right to left, and turn around. It's not like he went a little bit closer to the tree line, like he walked over. He was in the camera frame the whole time.
He was still on the shoulder of the road. He didn't even go down the slope, like into the grass. He
You
was
know
still
what?
on
If
the
I was in
shoulder.
his position, if someone told me that, hey, someone just attacked me and they just tried to rob me, and now they ran into the woods, I would call backup.
Yeah.
And go into the woods and start looking for this guy. Because what if he does it to someone else?
No kidding. Like, he could be a dangerous person. You know, he just robbed this guy and assaulted him, but you're not going to do anything. And honestly, like, why wouldn't you just call for backup? Like I said before, it's the road, a patch of woods, and then a Buffalo Wild Wings. So there's really, like, you can see the lights to Buffalo Wild Wings from the woods. So it's not like there'd be that big of an area to scour, you know? So
Yeah.
that's
And
kind of annoying.
what I also want to say is that this state trooper did not file a report of this incident.
No.
He didn't report it. So he would obviously let Gage go on his way after taking a brief statement, and that's it. Gage would continue his night as normal, and he would actually end up hitting up a underage female friend not too long after this. So he would hit up his friend, and they would go meet up, and she said that Gage, when he picked her up, he was all over the place. He looked drunk, and he was even offering her coke, and that basically she was scared because of the way he was acting. So.
And what's really messed up about this part is that the female was 16 years old.
Yes.
And he was a college student. Like, he had to have been in his,
She
like,
was
sophomore
underage.
year. So she was an underage woman, or underage child, and he's offering her coke. He's drunk, picking her up. He's texting her in the middle of the night. Like, what are you doing? Obviously, you're not this great guy. Like, you're sketchy. But by the next day, on February 13th, Pravin's cousin Ashley had noticed that Pravin's door to his bedroom was closed and locked. So Ashley just kind of assumed that he had gotten up and gone to class already. But after a while, Pravin's friends even noticed that he wasn't in any of his classes. And they kind of started contacting each other to check in and see if they had seen Pravin, and nobody had. So they contacted Ashley as well, who still at that point hadn't heard from Pravin or seen him. So he went back to their apartment and he figured out that Pravin's door was still locked and no one was answering. So they started to call Pravin's phone and there were no answers. And then eventually the phone just went straight to voicemail. So Ashley would get in contact with the landlord of their apartment, and the landlord came and actually opened Pravin's bedroom door, and he wasn't there. So around 9 p.m. that evening, Pravin's mom, Lovely, received a call that she thought would be Pravin checking in, but unfortunately it was the Carbondale Police Department calling to inquire if Pravin had come home. Lovely knew that Pravin would never just leave school without telling her, and he wouldn't just come home unannounced, especially during a school week. She totally, got upset and started freaking out because where is her son? You know, what if they don't know where he's at and she hasn't heard from him, then what could have happened? So she asked the officer what was wrong, and that's when she found out that Pravin was missing and nobody could locate him. So Lovely, Pravin's father, Matthew, and his two sisters would go to Carbondale and actually try to start looking for him and get involved with the search effort for Pravin.
Yeah, I will say one thing, that he had, great friends and family, because they knew something was wrong right away. They just knew it was out of character for him to not be punctual in his class and not hitting up his friends and family. They knew something was wrong.
Absolutely.
Upon arrival in Carbondale, Pravin's family would start their own investigation with Pravin's cousins and his friends. So Ashley is Pravin's cousin that he had originally gotten the apartment with. So they pieced together, the last whereabouts, what he did that night, and they discovered that Pravin had been out at a party. So after Pravin's family learned about what happened the night before, They went to the police and filed a report, and they offered rewards for anyone who had information about what had happened. And the community really started rallying around the Varughese family, especially their family up in Chicago. They would, come to Carbondale in basically buses
Yeah.
looking for him in efforts. And so around this time is when a cousin of Gage Bethune's would contact Carbondale police to report that he and Gage had been hanging out when Gage made a comment that, he knew Pravin and that he had been in the truck with him that night he went missing. So then Gage, the police would bring in Gage for questioning, and he actually voluntarily went.
Yeah, and it was quite the conversation that he had with police, because it was drastically different than the conversation he had with the state trooper who pulled him
Yeah.
over the night that he and Praveen went into the woods. So he would say that yes, he gave Praveen the ride and that Praveen was on the phone the whole time looking for drugs. He would have Gage drive around for over 30 minutes, giving him different directions like go left, go right, all this different stuff. But he never took Gage to like his destination. So when police told Gage that they actually had his phone records and there were no calls made at that in that chunk of time. So Gage responded with, well, he could have been acting like he was on the phone, but he was talking. And he made a hand gesture that he was talking on the phone. An incoming text from Praveen's phone showed one message that night, and the text was from an anonymous person who stated that they had drugs if Praveen needed any. Praveen did not respond to that text. Later that night, though, Praveen's phone showed two outgoing messages asking, got yay and got 2 Gs. And basically, yay is like a street term for cocaine for those who don't know. And 2 Gs just basically means like 2 grams. So he was asking if he had 2 grams of cocaine. They did not release the names of who these people were that were texting him and he was texting. So we don't know who that was. But although these texts were found, lovely Praveen's mother says there's one problem with all of this. She never knew of her son having anything to do with drugs, let alone drug dealing. She had never even seen her son drunk at this point. She even searched through thousands and thousands of Praveen's text messages, and there was literally not a single text of him mentioning drugs prior to that night. The only time it ever was mentioned was literally that night when he was with Bethune.
Wow.
So you're telling me that this kid who has literally zero history with drugs that we know of or alcohol before college is all of a sudden just searching for coke and 2 grams specifically that night? Like,
I
something
didn't
fishy.
think about this earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, something fishy's up with that.
I think someone else texted that, and it could have been Gage
I wouldn't doubt it at all if that was the
or
case.
or one of his friends, depending on what time it went out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's like so sketchy to me. Like maybe he felt forced by Gage to make those texts.
It could have been like,
or
hey, you're in my car. Like, do you
if
know
you
do you
don't-
know anyone that has this stuff? And maybe he texted just to help this guy out. 'cause
Yeah,
he's
or
giving
a
him
situation like if you don't help me find this, you're gonna have to get out of the car, and they're on the side of Route 13 in the
Yeah.
middle of February. So, yeah, super
Ooh.
sketchy.
Yeah. Next, Bethune would tell police that after driving for so long, he finally told Pravin that he had to go home. But Pravin, and I quote, wouldn't cooperate. And that's when he and Pravin started to rage a little bit. He would swing and punch me in the eye, and that's when I pulled over on the side of the road. And there was no bruises on this guy. I don't believe so, at least.
Well,
on Gage.
on Gage,
Yeah.
there's literally like everywhere I looked, like people don't talk about him because why would you? You know what I mean? Like it should be more in depth with it when it comes to him and his injuries, but I had a hard time finding that. But if you look at the dash cam footage, he doesn't look like somebody who just got roughed up.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he's bleeding from his nose. It's not like the officer's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, are you okay?" There was no medical attention needed for him. So, yeah, That's what I have to think about it.
And then he also mentioned that Praveen eventually got out of the truck, and the two would start grappling and fighting on the side of the road, and they would eventually end up rolling down the embankment to the side of the highway and into the woods, basically. Gage would admit hitting Praveen square in the face. That was in quote, and that was his first punch. He said that was the only punch he threw, and the fight lasted for about 30 seconds. And what he said, it wasn't really a fight at all, it was more like a scuffle. During this altercation, an unintentional phone call was made from Pravin's phone. The phone call would go to one of his female friends, who stated to police she heard another male's voice saying, "Give me that back," with Pravin answering, "I'm trying to help you, and give me my pills back." She also heard what sounded like someone running before she hung up the call. When questioned about these phrases, Gage stated that he didn't know of these being exchanged that night. I mean, this guy...
Liar.
I mean, he changed his story. That's like the first mistake he made.
Yeah.
He told the state trooper something else, and now he's saying something completely different.
Yeah, and like if you like just watch the interrogation videos, he looks irritated, he looks fidgety, he looks like he's trying to like think on his feet when they ask him certain questions, especially when they were like, "Yo, bro, we just went through his cell phone records and he wasn't on the phone when you said he was on the phone." And he's like, "Oh, well, I mean, he could have been acting like he was on the phone." What the hell? Who does that? So, no, Gage, he's full of shit.
Friends of Gage would tell the police that Gage would talk to them about the incident. So this prompted a second interview with the police. Upon this interview, Gage would state that he didn't know the kid was missing, and he basically told his friends the story because he didn't want to sound scared. The interview would also lead to Gage stating that Pravin was scared and jumped out of the car and started running. That's when Gage admitted he chased him and hit him. "I turned around, hit him in the face, and knocked him out," is what he told a friend. However, he would tell the interviewer it was all just a story to sound like Mr. Tough Guy. That Pravin only ran into the woods right before the state trooper arrived on the scene. None of these stories seem to match up with one another.
Yeah, he's literally told three different officers, three stories that have differences. I'll say that. I wouldn't say he said, "Oh, like, I didn't have him in the car. Oh, I did have him in the car. Oh, blah, blah, blah." He told them, "Okay, yeah, I hit him. Yeah, we scuffled. Yeah, he ran into the woods." But every time he's saying little details like differently. So sketchy. This would give the police and Pravin's family an idea of where to start searching, though. Unfortunately, about 400 yards from where Gage's truck was stopped on Route 13, Pravin was found dead in the woods. The police went to the hotel where Pravin's family was staying and notified them of the discovery of Pravin's body. The hotel was located just down the street from the crime scene, guys. You could even see where all of it happened from the upper floors of the hotel. So his family, somehow
Yards
this all
away.
worked out. Yeah, that they were yards away. So they were very close to Pravin. And one thing that stood out to me is Lovely had a dream before they found Pravin's body. Okay. And she had a dream that Pravin was in a car and then the car was driving and all of a sudden he was pushed out of a moving car. And in Indian culture, they say if you have an early morning dream, it comes true. So ironic, that like what a coincidence for all of that to happen. She knew something was wrong with her baby and she knew from the jump something had happened to him that was out of his control. So Lovely, like any other mother, asked to see her son. And when she saw Pravin's body, she knew something horrible had happened to him because she was a trained nurse and she saw all of these injuries on his body. She saw bruises on his head. She saw bruises on his arm. There were scratches all over his body. He was injured, very, very injured, multiple places. So she asked, obviously, who beat my baby? She saw all of that, and the coroner would tell her that they were consistent injuries with post-mortem discoloration. What the hell? So he kind of blew it off. But it's the Carbondale police chief at the time, Jody O'Gwyn, who really just dropped the ball here, because he stated in a press conference that there was no injury believed to be caused by an altercation or any suspicious means. When the autopsy was released, it stated that Pravin had succumbed to hypothermia and that there were no injuries. Lovely didn't believe that for a second, and she knew from her medical training that there were in fact injuries to her son. She just knew it, you know. She's how could her eyes have deceived her, you know? But the autopsy would also claim any injuries were just from being in the wooded area, and that there was no blunt force trauma reported.
If you look at the pictures from, when they found his body and some of the pictures from the autopsy, any normal person would be able to tell that he didn't just freeze to death.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy had bruises and scratches everywhere. His face was beat up.
It was dented in. Like,
his face was beat up. I watch a lot of UFC.
mm-hmm.
I know what it looks like when someone gets punched in the face.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. Not once, but repeatedly. The autopsy had a lot of mistakes, and they had at one point Pravin listed as a Middle Eastern male, and he's Indian.
Yeah.
And it even had him listed as a female at one point.
Like what?
So there's obviously a lot of mishandling going on with this case from the get-go. Like, it is not being handled properly at all. These guys are not being proactive. From when that first state trooper saw him, he didn't give a shit. He didn't want to go into the woods. And now these guys are doing all this shit. So Pravin's toxicology report actually came back negative, and they tested him for every drug. And Lovely knew her son would come back negative, but she wasn't sure about alcohol. The funeral director who was presiding over Pravin's funeral would contact Lovely and tell her, "You need to see your son. He has injuries." His body wasn't the body of a frostbitten person. She and the family were unsatisfied with the cause of death being hypothermia, and she demanded a second autopsy with a third-party coroner. The coroner would report, and it was drastically different, and the underlying cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, and at least 3 other injuries. A defensive injury to the right arm. He would also state that the immediate and underlying cause of death was undetermined and should result in further investigation.
So I wanted to point out here too that the underlying cause of death, let's just look at it in this scenario, okay? Say you're trapped in a burning house because someone trapped you there, all right? You're most likely going to die from smoke inhalation, or you're going to die from burning, asphyxiation, but that's your manner of death. But the reason that you died is because somebody put you in that situation. So they're saying that the underlying cause of death is blunt force trauma, but it's undetermined what the immediate cause of death was. So they're still looking into that. And that's why he's saying, okay, there needs to be a further investigation done. It is at this point that justice for Pravin was demanded by his family and advocates, but a grand jury would deny the request to indict him. So the family decided to open a lawsuit against the city of Carbondale, their police department, and Gage Bethune.
So wild.
Right. So they're ready. They're ready for the fight of their lives to prove their baby was murdered.
That's being mistreated. Like how?
Yes. Mishandled from the jump. But lots of people began to speculate and talk and say that, the family's only doing this for money. They're only doing this to get money out of the situation. But they knew in their hearts that they were doing this for justice. And Lovely even stated in an interview that no amount of money could bring back her son. So the response to the lawsuit basically came down to the police chief, Jody O'Gwyn, at the time being fired. He was the one who made the initial statements about it just being hypothermia and there being no injuries to Pravin's body. Even though the department stated it had nothing to do with the case, it really had. It had been 3 years of fighting for justice at this time when the family would drop the lawsuit against the city and police department, but they settled with Gage Bethune. We can't discuss, or they can't discuss,
Yeah.
what they settled with at the end of it all, because it's got to be kept confidential due to the court's ruling on that. So, however, a new special prosecutor would bring the case before a new grand jury, and this time around, the grand jury would come back with the charge of first-degree murder. So Gage was arrested, but eventually he was bailed out on $100,000 bail. So he got to be free as he awaited trial.
Man, what a shit show.
What a shit show. And that
I
doesn't,
feel bad.
it doesn't surprise me though. It's Carbondale. Like, they're small and they don't deal with this kind of stuff ever. So, and just the,
Well, this is not the first murder at SIUC. Like,
No.
I think there was been a few.
yeah, but it's small town politics, man. It's just different, and it's shady politics and shady police all over the country, not just here, but yeah, it's a wild situation. So the trial would prove to be actually another heartbreaking situation. Although Gage was found guilty of first-degree murder by a jury, the judge threw out the sentencing on a technical wording error in the indictment documents. And the indictment documents had been drafted up previously before this trial even happened. So it's amazing to me that the judge even used this stuff, like, against them.
Oh, and can I just say this happened on the day of sentencing. So
Yeah.
the jury found him guilty, right? So, and then the next date was set for his sentencing. The day they were supposed to determine how long he was going to go to jail for. The judge pulled this out.
Yes, and the issue was over this word knowingly. And basically it was saying that Gage knew that by him hitting him, he would render him unable to get out of the frigid cold, and he basically knew that he was causing his death. So he said, hey, that's going to confuse the jury, so I'm throwing it out. And that he was facing 20 years or more in prison when this judge threw this crap out. Like, what the hell?
So I just want to kind of explain that a little bit better. So basically the word knowingly in the indictment, the judge, what he's saying is that word knowingly in the indictment makes it seem like Gage did everything intentionally. And that word could have confused the jury and steered them into the direction of a guilty verdict.
Yeah.
So he's saying that was basically unfair to Gage, and that there has to be a whole new trial, bro. Like, that is insane.
Yeah, the judge did offer to do a retrial, but after 7 years, it has yet to begin, and Gage has yet to be put behind bars. The state hasn't even started or set a date for a new trial. So
he could be set on a new trial. The key word here, could. What does that even mean?
So what do they have to go to a whole new grand jury? And what's messed up to me is Gage got that lawyer Bloomberg or Berg something, and he's like a nationally known lawyer.
Yes, I believe he was a lawyer for like R. Kelly.
R. Kelly, yeah. So what the hell? Gage Bethune just got this freaking powerhouse of an attorney that works for the most shady people.
That's what happened. Is like that day of the trial, Gage showed up with this. He showed up with this new lawyer.
Yep.
And he showed up in street clothes.
Yeah.
He didn't even have, like a normal prison jumpsuit. No shackles. He walked in, and Pravin's mom, like, they knew something was wrong because they wouldn't do that. Why is someone who was just found guilty of a crime showing up in street clothes? Like,
yeah.
So, that, what a turnaround that could have been. Like, I can't believe it, man.
People even said, what's the craziest to me is people said about the judge, like, he was very fair and thorough leading up to that point, but everybody was so shell-shocked at what happened because they were like, well, he's done a good job until now, so what the heck? Like, why is he turning? Why are you throwing this out over a word in an indictment document that was presented before the trial. So they went through all of this, and the judge even said, look, we have enough evidence against you that we know you're guilty.
Yeah,
So what are you doing?
It doesn't change the fact that they have concrete evidence. They have dash cam footage of him at the scene of the crime. They have him saying that he hit the guy square in the face the night he went missing.
Yeah.
Where he went missing. It doesn't get any crazier than this.
No.
There's obviously something going on in the background that not everyone knows, and it's causing so much trouble with this case. And it's 2 Sundays ago actually marked the 8th year anniversary of Pravin's passing. And this memory and story still lives on through his family members. I mean, they've done so much with this story. They've started a scholarship foundation for students who want to study in criminal justice. We'll obviously link in the description and for our YouTube channel, for the Facebook page.
Please make donations if you can. It goes to a great, great cause.
They're celebrating his life every year, though. I mean, I see it on Facebook, and such a crazy story, man. Just what a roller coaster from, knowing who it was, they find him guilty, and then just completely let down.
Yeah, that's just the truly such a heartbreaking thing to happen at the end of all of this, because you've literally been proven guilty by a jury of your peers. There's enough evidence against you to say that you are guilty.
So much
yet
evidence.
You're walking free.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And that actually brings us to an end of this episode, and what a crazy one it was.
Yes.
Please be sure to like this video if you're on YouTube.
The more you know, the less you fear. So tune in next week, right back here.